Hello everybody, this is Nancy from the summer weekday batch. I've gotten a few questions on triggers. People have been interested in wondering if I was able to do them, and if so, how. And yes, ultimately I was able to answer the questions on triggers for the homework, and I only halfway understood what I was doing, and I really don't like doing the cut and paste and faking it till you make it thing. But on this one, I wanted to get my homework in, and it was the only thing holding me back, so I just kind of did the best I could. And I've still been poking around looking at triggers more on the internet to see if I could understand them better. And I think I have a pretty good understanding of what a trigger is. A trigger is something you do. It's like a function. We're going to call it a function or a procedure, actually. We're going to call it a procedure that you create when you want something to happen after somebody does something in the database. For instance, my name is Nancy, and I am in charge of making sure my customer service records are kept updated at XYZ company. And Mr. John Smith calls and says, well, I want to order something, but my home address has changed. And I say, well, I'll be happy to change that for you. Although in real life, he'd have to do it himself, So I changed his address for him, but he's in 2 or 3 tables. He's got a table for his customer information. He's got a table for his orders that he's made previously. And he has a table for his shipping information. So I'm going to create a trigger that says when we update his information in the customer service table, it will automatically update that information as well in the orders table and in the shipping table. That saves me from having to physically go into 3 different tables and change the information manually. So that's the basic function of a trigger, to do something for you in reaction to something that happens in the database. And literally you can make triggers for anything. It can be very, very, very complex. And you can have cascading triggers where one trigger will trigger another trigger that triggers another trigger. I go on to Reddit and read some of that stuff, and it's crazy. But it did help me, Googling around a lot to just kind of solidify it in my mind. I'm still waiting to hear back on people to tell me more about what this :new.employee ID stuff is. I can't really tell you in plain English because I'm not sure I know. So this is one of those do it anyway type things. So if I find out more information on what that is, I will let you know. Basically, I think it's because it's a pseudo record. And anytime you have a pseudo record, you use the colon. And that's all I know, but I don't really understand that. But we're going to fake it. All right, so what we were told to do in our homework, we're supposed to do a create trigger, and then an update trigger, and then a delete trigger. And they all work in pretty much the same way. We'll start here with the create trigger. And because I've been fiddle-farting around a lot with the trigger functions, I don't remember if I have a trigger called insert trigger or not, and I'm too lazy to go look right now. So instead of just saying create a trigger, I'm doing create or replace. So whatever's in there is going to get replaced by the trigger I do now. Let's look at this and break it down, because this breaks down into 2 parts. The first part is telling me what I'm going to do in general, and then the second one is all the steps that I'm going to do in order to do it. Excuse my little dry throat here. So first we're going to create or replace a trigger. We're going to name that trigger insert_trigger. You can name it whatever you like. The reason we name it insert_trigger is that we know what it is. You have to name it something that is relevant. You could name it, if you're wanting to change, update the telephone number, you say update telephone trigger. After insert, and that means after we insert information on employees table 1, then we're going to go, then that will fire the trigger. Then the trigger is going to go ahead and insert information in employees table 2. So basically it says anytime you're going to insert information in employees table 1, then it's also going to give you that same information in employees table 2.
Call from Sharif Shihada.
All right, apologize for the interruption, but when the hubby calls, you answer the phone because he usually has a good reason for calling. So what were we talking about? The trigger and what it is and what it means. So we talked about we're going to create or replace a trigger. We're going to name that trigger insert trigger. We're going to it will be triggered after somebody inserts something on the employees table, and it will check each row. And that's telling us the basic gist of what this trigger does. It's like the title of a book versus the stuff inside between the covers. So we begin. Chapter 1. Insert into employees tables 2 all these values. So basically this trigger says anytime you put something in tables, after you insert something on employees table 1, you will also insert the following information in employees table 2. So if you're replacing or updating information, if you update the employee ID, the name, first name, last name, the email, the phone number, the hire date, the job ID, salary, commission percentage, manager ID, or department ID of anything on employees table 1, then you will do the same thing automatically. The trigger will automatically make sure that goes into employees table 2. That is how you keep everything coordinated, and then you don't have to go in and do stuff by hand. So, and then you end. And that's it. That's the trigger. So let's work together to see if we can do it. For this particular question and answer set, create, update, delete, you will need a couple of tables. So you want to create tables, which I did. I created a couple of tables. You might laugh. I created 2 tables. I call them Hate Triggers 1 and Hate Triggers 2 because I didn't have a whole lot of fun working on these. And then I created them, they were empty, and then I went ahead and put one employee record in it. Okay? So this is what we have to work with. I'm going to insert some information on employees table 1, and then if my trigger works correctly, then it will also insert that information in employees trigger 2. So first we have to create the trigger. Where are we going to put it? Obviously we're going to do it right in here. Alright, so we're not going to use employees table 1 because I wrote my own tables. Hate Triggers 1, Hate Triggers 2. Alright, so this trigger now says anytime you do anything, if you insert something in Hate Triggers 1, then that information is also going to be inserted in Hate Triggers 2. And I cannot remember, I know in most cases you do not need the semicolon, but there are exceptions, so we will try it without, and then we will try it with if that does not work. Okay, as you see, trigger created with compilation errors. And let's see, encountered the symbol end of file when expecting one of the So we have a semicolon where we're not supposed to have one. Perhaps that's it. Alright, let's try it again. And let's try it again. Let's try putting those back in. Trigger created. Okay, so you see, don't give up. You can always try and go back in and pick up what you did wrong. So what I had done wrong is I took out that final semicolon. And remember, as I said, Usually, when you are working from within the notepad, editing, you do not need a semicolon at the end. But because of the nature of this, because of it being a trigger rather than just entering in a query, you do need that. So we have created the trigger. So now, let's go ahead and try and do something with that. So what do I want to do? First I'm going to clear the screen because it's kind of messy now. And up until now, I haven't done anything with that trigger. The trigger has not been triggered. If I were to go in and show you Hate Triggers 1 and Hate Triggers 2, it will still only have that one record. So let's go ahead and do another record. Get rid of this because we're done. The trigger is created. Now, we are going to do another record. We're going to give another employee. So we want to have 201, and we're going to say Alton first name, Brown second name, goodeats@yahoo.com. And don't laugh, that's just, you can tell I'm hungry. Haven't had lunch yet. So now we have this new employee that we're going to insert into 1, Hate Triggers 1. If I did my trigger correctly, we'll go look in Trigger 2 and see that it's in there also. So let's just say a little prayer. 1 row created. So let's go look. So now as you see in Hate Triggers 1, I did this manually. I created a listing earlier for John Smith, and then just now I created a listing for Alton Brown. I should have triggered the trigger to put Alton Brown in Hate Triggers 2. So let us take a look. And it worked. Hallelujah! Which is really good because I've done this same video like 12 times and it hasn't worked. So this is triggers. That's how you do it, and that's what it's doing. Hopefully that'll help you understand. I will email everybody with I'll have to email everybody with an example of a delete trigger, because if you look at Mr. Hanip's notes where he has the delete trigger, let me show you. Where he says write a delete trigger, he actually does not have an example in there. There's no delete trigger in there, unless I took it out and saved it, but I don't think I did that. But what I did is I went to the People in Tech forum, and I looked at other stuff that other students had submitted and mentoring things, and I ultimately found a delete trigger, and I'm just going to like copy and paste that and give that to you guys, because there's no sense all of us having to try and recreate the wheel. So let's go over for the top, and then I will end this because I don't like to make it too long. So in order to do the trigger part of the homework, first you have to understand what a trigger is. A trigger means that when you do something, it will automatically do something else. In this case, I did create or replace trigger, and I named it insert trigger. And it says every time after I insert something on the employees table 1, I am going to make sure that same information gets inserted into employee tables 2. That is what this means in plain English. And having someone explain it in plain English is really so, it's like if you have been given a calculus textbook and no teacher to teach it. It's very difficult. What will you have to do to prepare for these 3 questions? You will have to prepare, you will have to create 2 tables. Remember your syntax when creating tables is, and I'll just do it here, create table. This is a table as, and you're telling it, I want it to look the same as the employees table. I want it to have all the information inside the employees table. But I don't want all the actual rows in there. I just want the column headings. See, I'm telling you, I want all this stuff here, but I don't want any of this stuff here. And then you do that, and then you create a table. So when you look at it, it's got the column headings. It won't have anything else in it. When you do those two, you will substitute those. When you cut and paste, you will substitute where it says Employees Table 2 and Employees Table 3, or Employees Table 1 and Employees Table 2. You'll substitute that whenever you cut and paste it into the edit pad, because unless you create Employees Table 2 and 3. But I just did my own names because I mess with it for so long. And that's pretty much it. It's not rocket science. Once you have it translated into plain English, it's not that bad. I still am not sure how I would write a trigger from scratch utilizing these pseudo records. I'm going to try and find out more for that, but you know what? This will help us get through the homework. So that is it. I'm going to go ahead and end this and get it uploaded, and I'm going to call Hasna back because she just called me. Okay, take care, everybody. Bye-bye.